Bruchim Habayim, good morning, those people who are here with us live and those who are watching online. Bruchim Habayim. So, I'm not going to lie to you, I am absolutely exhausted today. And the reason is for a very, very good reason. Although I gave shiur over Shabbat, I got to rest over Shabbat. But Motzei Shabbat, I met a very interesting individual that I'd wanted to meet for a long time. And my dear friend and neighbor, Chaim Greenfield, he invited over the first ever Hasidic White House correspondent to his home, a guy called Turks, a very interesting man who writes in the Jewish publications and is in the White House all week as part of the press corps on behalf of the Jewish press. So I met him last night, and I was expecting to have a conversation on politics, which does interest me, and Israel, which really interests me. But we ended up speaking about till, I think, from 10 p.m. till 2:30 a.m., which explains why I'm half asleep, is a prophet. And I asked him permission to mention his name, and I want to share something amazing that he's a little bit different to what I usually do in the morning shiur, but I must talk about something he showed me in a prophecy of a fascinating prophet called Ovadia. Ovadia is one of the later prophets, and his prophecy, which came towards the end of his life, first of all, he's a very interesting individual, Ovadia. Ovadia was a ger, he was a convert to Judaism. Amazing that a ger, someone who grew up in his case, he actually happened to grow up among the most anti-Semitic people in his day, and we're going to see in our day as well, and his prophecy is going to reflect that. What's fascinating about the prophet Ovadia is that although he came as a ger, he didn't just become Jewish, right? Which itself, of course, is a big deal. It takes time and effort and learning Torah and mitzvot and Hebrew. He did all that. And then he reached the highest heights of becoming a Navi, a prophet. And he did so much in his life, and he fought against very evil kings and queens among the Jewish people, saved prophets himself. He was an incredible convert and individual, really. I mean, I think every convert, everyone looks at Yitro and Ruth to be the prophets they look up to, the great people they look up to. But actually, what you need to do is look at Ovadia, because he really epitomizes. He gave a prophecy, which is a very short prophecy. It's one chapter, I think 21 pesukim, right? It's mamash a nothing chapter in terms of the size. I mean, you go to the other prophets in Tanakh, and they just go on and on and on. He has very little to say. So I actually asked, this guy Turks, this very interesting individual, I spoke to him and I said, why such a short prophecy? And he said, because when you know what you need to say and you understand your mission, you don't need many words. Your words are short. You can shoot straight and succinctly and say exactly what you need to say. And that is the prophecy of Ovadia. Why is this guy talking about Ovadia? Now, I'd read through Ovadia because I wrote a book on Mashiach, as you know, and his prophecy has a lot to say, right? And I quoted him a few times in some of the pirushim, some of the explanations. However, in his case, he became obsessed with this book post-October 7th, and it changed his life. This one prophecy of Ovadia changed this Hasidic Jew's life. He said, before I read this book and got into it, I was religious, but I wasn't really, my heart wasn't fully into it. This book shifted him. It's an amazing thing, by the way, as a side point, and I mentioned this to him, that everyone has one book. Every Jew has one sefer that is their book, that they connect to. Some people have an entire book of Shas. My Rosh Hashiva used to tell me that everyone has a book, but everyone has one book of Talmud, of Gemara, that becomes theirs. His was Shabbat. And he said that he learned through all of Shas. He was a big Talmud Chacham. But his tractate of Shabbat was his, and he knew it backwards and forwards. So he says that some people are drawn to a certain sefer. It could be a book of Tanakh. It could be a book of Gemara. It could be a book by the Rishonim or Acharonim. Right? They are attracted and have a connection, and this book becomes their book. Some people have Mesilat Yesharim, right? They tell me they learn it every day, they become obsessed with this one book. This isn't a coincidence. It means that their neshama is attracted to this sefer. It could be the neshama is attracted not to what the content of the book is, but to the author of the book. The author of the book becomes their connective spiritual guide. Although this person may have died, centuries or millennia ago, this becomes their sefer. And as you go through life, you feel connected to this book, and it becomes your Avigdor Miller, for example. His book that he kept speaking about is Chovat Olavovot. Now, I never heard him say this, right? But he spoke about it all the time. And it seems like, and he said that this book changed my life. As a young man, he opened this book, and suddenly his life changed. You hear people say this. So people have to know themselves, understand how a sefer, how one book or the author of the book can connect to them. I happen to have met, this is another long story, needs an entire shiur to go into it, a very interesting woman who lived here in Manhattan, and she used to come to my shiurim, and she was a Balat Tshuva, a very holy woman, and was Bracha Miller, and my wife and I became very close to her. We had many Shabbat Sudot. She came to us a number of times, and she was a healer. I know it sounds weird what I'm telling you, but it came to my head. I must share it. Maybe someone here or watching online will connect to this. And she was a religious woman, and she definitely had a sixth sense. And I checked into her via other rabbanim who went to meet her. One of my rabbis I was very close to went with his Rosh Hashiva to meet her once. And as soon as he walked in, she told him which page of the Zohar he was studying currently. That's what he told me. And this is a big Talmid Chacham. So this woman's not messing around. So she said to me, your book, and she told me my book. She told me my book. It was very strange. At that point, I was young. I'm going back 25 years. I'm like, what do you mean my book? This is the book your neshama connects to. That's what she told me. Which happened to be the Abarbanel on Sefer Daniel, which I hadn't even heard of. I didn't know the Abarbanel had a commentary on Sefer Daniel at that point, It was only in the past 5 years that I actually found this book. It's very hard to find this book. I had to pay a lot of money to find it. I actually gave an 8-part series on Sefer Daniel. You can see on YouTube where I use his Derech Limud. When I wrote my book, I delved into it. So whatever that means, I'm just telling you. Okay, you could take this part or leave it. Anyway, so he said to me last night, when we were talking for hours and hours, there was a group of us, it was a fascinating discussion, a really wonderful man. And he says that this book connected to him. And he said specifically post-October 7th. So I said, well, what part of it really spoke to you? And he said that as a kid, his teacher told him to take one book of Tanakh and to study it. So what did he do? He went through Tanakh. He wasn't interested. He wasn't a good student. He was kicked out of yeshiva many times. And so we said, which is the shortest book? Ovadia, 21 Pesukim. I'll study that. So he read it. And while he's reading it, as a young man, this Jake Turks told me, he saw there was a reference to Teman, to Yemen, being a major power and a problem for the Jewish people. So he, what? Yemen? I mean, you tell me Iraq, you tell me Iran, you tell me, the church, you tell me anywhere else, but Yemen? And he kind of dismissed it and said, this is ridiculous. And he kind of put it away. Who was Ovadia? What's he talking about? It means nothing to me. Happens to be after October 7th, and the missiles started coming in from Yemen. He thought back and said, wow, I remember that. And he went to meet with one of his rabbis, and one of his rabbis happened to have on his shelf a book that had been there for a year and a half. He just kind of left there, which was a commentary of the Bnei Yissachar, this book over here that he actually gave me last night as a gift, very kindly. So okay, I gave him my book as a gift as well. So he said, take this book and have a look and see what he says. And that was it. It opened up his heart and his mind, and he said it changed him. And by the way, this is a Hasidic Jew. This is the guy who's walking around with long payot, and the guy walking into the White House, asking, you can see online him asking Trump questions, just as you, by the way, asked him. We said, aren't you does this feel weird to sit there as a Hasidic, the first ever Hasidic, if not Orthodox Jew, in the press corps, asking the president questions? You see this, Adak Shav, he's there right now, he's there all week. So he says, when you're a religious Jew and you dress up this way, you don't see yourself. So I don't realize I'm dressed like this Right? I just see other people. It's not my problem, it's their problem if they look at me differently, he said. A real Kiddush Hashem. Anyway, so he thought back and he wanted to look it up. And it happens to be that Ovadia speaks about the fall of Edom, which is the geographical location, and Esav, the brother of Yaakov and his descendants at the end of days. Why was he chosen to do this? Because he was from Edom. So Hashem chose him to be the one to talk about the downfall of his own people. Now it seems a little harsh, right? And we know that even converts feel some kind of rachmanut about their previous lifetime. We know that Yitro, for example, when he spoke about the fall of the Egyptians in the Yam Suf, and he describes it, V'yishma Yitro, right, which was my Bar Mitzvah Parsha, when he talks about it, it says he had chidudim. It made his skin crawl because he still felt some connection to his previous people. But he was the one who had to speak about that. And that's what brought him to Torah mitzvot, despite the fact that Yitro came from the other nations. So to Ovadia, Hashem said, you're the best. Because if a Jew who was born a Jew speaks about it, it's like, of course, what's he going to talk about? Right? His ancestor Yaakov was tortured by Esav, right? His brother. Of course he's going to talk about it. So I choose you, Hashem says. I choose you, Ovadia, to be the one, talk about the downfall of Edom and Esav at the end of days. Right at the end of days. So I wanted to pick on a couple of Pesukim which he highlighted. He spoke for a lot. Wow. But he highlighted this, and God willing, I've told him he's got to write a book on this, but he said it's not ready yet. So if you look at the 9th Pasuk of the chapter, because there's only one chapter, it says, V'chatu giborecha teman. You're going to see the end of the strong people of Teman. Okay? And he says, Rashi over there mentions that we're going to see that they are going to, after hurting us and being connected to Esav. Now that's interesting. How Yemen, that's what we're talking about, who are connected to Esav. Now he tried to find that connection. It may be not so clear. You could say that the Houthis in Yemen are connected to Iran. They're being funded, right? So how are they connected to Esav today, which is the Christian European world? That's who we understand Esav and Edom to be today. How we get to that conclusion is another long discussion, not for now, but that's a fascinating in of itself.
Iran is the true Aryan race. That's the name Iran.
Okay, that's good. Okay, the word Iran does come from Aryan. Are they considered Esav? They could be. That's one way to look at it. There's no doubt about it. It's where the word Iran comes from. However, right now, they are Yishmael. We know that because they follow the Shia 12, which we've spoken about before many times, Islam. But things are a lot more convoluted than you realize. And the funding of Iran came from the West. They were nothing. They were nothing at all. Right? The Ayatollahs came in and they took over. And we're going deep down the rabbit hole right now, but I have to mention it since you brought it up. And they are funded, and they were bankrupt, right? Trump, in his first term, bankrupted them. They had nothing at all. And then the West gave Iran money, billions of dollars. Obama did too. And he sent billions of dollars over there. And this money translated into weapons, into a vast amount. Now, I heard Trump speak myself. He said, I bankrupted them, and then they came in and they gave money and resources and literally flew over pallets of cash, of dollars that went in, ended up funding. So there's some kind of sick collusion that is going on that we're not privy to, but we know it definitely happened, ended up funding Iran, ended up in Teman. It's fascinating that it's saying that we're going to see the end of these Yemenite Houthis, who now we know who they are, because it's happening. I mean, I don't know if the Yemenites caused much trouble to the land of Israel in the past 2,000 years. I'm not an expert in Yemenite history. I don't recall there being a galut, an exile of Yemen. I mean, there were Jews in Yemen, and they were very religious Jews, by the way. As a side point, the Jews in Yemen were and still are a very strong community. And they followed the Rambam, who actually is the one who speaks about Mashiach a lot. And they had many false messiahs that the Rambam helped them with. The Igeret Temam, the letters from Teman, from Yemen, were letters that the Rambam wrote outside of Yemen and sent to the Jews in Yemen to give them chizuk, because they were dealing with false messiahs. It was a big problem for them. A big problem for them. That's why, by the way, Yemenites follow the Rambam l'shita. They don't follow the Shulchan Aruch like we all do, the rest of the Sephardim do. They follow the Rambam, which is why you see Yemenites talking between washing hands and eating bread. Now, as Sephardi, if they say something, it's not the worst deal, okay? They don't have to wash their hands again and make another bracha, which Ashkenazim do. But the Sephardim, they'll talk. So I used to go to a rabbi when I was a bachor in Israel. I used to go to him for Shabbat, Rabbi Sharabi, big tzaddik, big Talmud Chacham, and he had the full gear on, and he wouldn't have challah. He used to have the bread, like the special Yemenite pita bread he would make, and he would wash his hands for the bread, because you have to do that, and then he'd have general conversation about anything. And he said to me, you can't talk. I can, because I'm a Yemenite, I follow Shitat Rambam. I follow. By the way, as a Sephardi, even if you talk, it's not Hesach Hadat, it's not such a thing, and you don't have to wash or make another bracha. You can do that as well. But we try to make it connected to the Su'udah. Hi, can you bring the salt, please? But he's having general conversations. So the Yemenites, for the most part, the Jewish people were rich, and then things happened. They changed. Israel, Iran, and they became a hammer for the Iranians to hit us with. They're going to go. V'chatu giborecha teman leman yikaret ish mehar Esav. Right? Mikatel. So we're going to see this fall of Yemen related to the fall of Esav. Esav are going to fall at the end of days. The pride of Esav, of the Western world, is going to go. And then the next pasuk, which I have to mention, and I have a lot more to say, but mechamas achicha. It mentions Hamas explicitly. So we've mentioned Yemen. We know that Yemen are funded by Iran. We know that Paras, according to Yechezkel, Gog and Magog, he told me last night, we had a big discussion on this, I disagreed on this. He wanted to tell me that Iran is actually Amalek. I don't think so. I think there are elements of Amalek in many, many places. He wanted to say that Esav, we know is Amalek, because that's where Amalek comes from historically. They're going to cause a lot of trouble at the end of days. But he wanted to say that we see them, they're really the ones who are infiltrating and bringing a lot of the anti-Semitism in Europe is Amalek, but also Iran. I think that's what he said. It's a little bit tricky because Amalek are our job to fill and to kill. Right? That's Mashiach's job to wipe out Amalek finally. That's Amalek. Gog and Magog is in Hashem's hands. Hashem will take care of Gog and Magog. We see that from the prophet. Anyway, it says, Mechamas achicha Yaakov techascha busha. We're going to see that Hamas are going to fall at the end of days. And he says, your brother Yaakov. Your brother Yaakov. Okay? So Hamas doesn't mean we're translating as Hamas now. Right? But that's a relatively new invention. Hamas means the violence. And that's what Rashi says. Mechamas achicha Yaakov, because of the violence that they did against Yaakov, bishvil Hamas shasiti leYaakov. So Yaakov had to deal with Hamas. Not the Hamas that we're dealing with, those individuals who are, in Gaza right now. By the way, Gaza as an area has been a thorn in our sides for centuries. All right? David HaMelech had to deal with Gaza, and Shimshon, everyone had to deal with Gaza. It's Eretz Yisrael. But it's always been a problem of in historically speaking, the Philistines, and in our day, the updated version, the Palestinians, have always used Gaza as the entry point. There's a certain element in that place. By the way, it's beautiful Gaza. I've been in it. Right? When I was in Israel for my year in yeshiva, before I went to university, we used to go to Gaza. It's the most beautiful part of Israel. Really, the beaches in Gaza are more beautiful than the beaches in Eretz Yisrael. I'm telling you right now, it's absolutely stunning. You have no idea what it was. What they gave away, it's insanity they gave it away, but it's absolutely beautiful. It's going to come back to us.
Is all of Gaza part of biblical Israel?
Absolutely. Absolutely. It's just been a difficult part. It's been occupied for millennia, and there's some kind of, you have to go into Kabbalah a little bit, there's been a little bit of tumah that has been resident over there, and it was given to other forces, should we say. But it's Eretz Yisrael. 100%. Yes, when we went in, but he left sparks there. He left, okay. That's a good question. Why he didn't finish the job of wiping out Amalek and the other people over there? That's a very, very good question. But he didn't. He left it. That's a good question when we study Sefer Yoshua to figure out why he didn't finally uproot every bit of Avodah Zarah and challenge the land of Israel. It makes no sense, but he didn't. There were still pockets left, even after Yeshua went into Israel. But he was a great leader. So it says, Mechamas Achiki Yaakov. So in his day, Hamas was causing violence against Yaakov, and that came in the hand of Esav. But in the end of days, we're going to see, if you jump to the end of the chapter, which is actually, the words are going to sound familiar to you because you say them every single day. Va'alu Moshe Mahares Tzion. We're going to see this redemption come from Har Tzion. Lishpot et Har Esav, to judge the mountain of Esav. Va'etal Hashem Melucha. Sound familiar? We say this every day, right? In Shacharit. Before you get to Yishtabach, these words of Ovadia are slipped in over there. Before we make Yishtabach, we say these words because Yishtabach is the praise of Hashem. So Ovadiah's final words of Tzion. Tzion, of course, is a reference not only to all of Israel, but what it's really a reference to is Yerushalayim. That was Tzion, from Lashon Mitsuyan, remarkable, amazing, set apart. That's where Tzion comes from. But it's really a reference to Yerushalayim and eventually to all of Israel. There's going to be a judgment against Esav. Esav and Edom, right? These are the nations that have been hurting us, together with all their little conduits of Iran and, of course, Houthis and Hezbollah, those are the people. And we're going to see the Melucha. That's the final words. Their Melucha is going to fall, and our Melucha is going to rise. Who's our Melucha? Very soon. Very, very soon. I can't give you a date, but very, very soon. We're on the cusp of this. All these words. I'm going to talk more about this tomorrow, B'ezrat Hashem. Our conversation finished at 2:30. I had to wake up at 6 a.m. So I didn't get too much sleep last night. But he talks about this, and I'm going to talk about it. The Melucha he's talking about is our Melucha of Mashiach. Because Mashiach will be a Melech. So our Melucha is going to rise when their Melucha falls. That we're going to see, that switch is going to happen, and that's the direct switch that we're seeing happening in our days. Unfortunately, it's going to be Ishmael invading Esav before that actually happens. The Abarbanel, who I follow, says the final war actually won't even involve the Jewish people that much in Israel. It's going to be between Bnei Ishmael and Bnei Esav. That's going to happen in the end of days, that we're seeing that's going to happen, and there's going to be an infiltration of Esav, of Ishmael, inside those nations in Europe that we're seeing right now. That's all going to come to an end, happening right now. This is live action prophets. Okay, 22 minutes, we're done. Have a great day.